Hi, my name's Penny, and as usual, I'm here to talk about some bookish things. Specifically, today I'm going to talk about the books I've read in the month of April and how I did on my OWLS. So the OWLS were part of the magical readathon, which I will leave all the details down below, but basically there were 12 classes, each of which had a different prompt, and I wanted to read books for all 12 prompts because I want to follow through with being an alchemist, and an alchemist needs to know about everything. So let's talk about how I did. I am going to talk about the books from the worst books through to the best books, and there were a lot of 2-star books on this month's reading list, which was a bit disappointing, but there was a 5-star near the end, which saved the day. So the worst book that I read this month, I did consider giving it a 1-star, but in the end it made me feel something, so I bumped it up to a 2-star, and that is The Casual Vacancy by J.K. Rowling. So this is the first book she put out after the Harry Potter series. It follows this small town after a councillor dies and looks at the impacts his death has on a lot of different characters. I won't go into too much detail because I have done for all these books some little 4-book mini reviews, and I will do it for the ones I haven't done yet, and I will link all those down below. So if for any of these books you want to know more details, you can check that out. But 2 stars, almost a 1-star, and I read this for Muggle Studies where you needed to read a contemporary. Oh, then also this month I did finish one audiobook that I didn't count towards my OWLS, and that was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. So this is the second book in the A Court of Thorns and Roses series. The first one was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. The second one is supposedly a Hades and Persephone retelling. Basically, you've got this girl, Feyre, who gets involved with the Fae and all their intrigues, and now they're preparing for a war in the second book. But primarily, these are romance books with a little bit of fantasy on the side, and since I don't really like fantasy, it's not really a surprise that I don't like these. And I have found out that my library doesn't have the audiobook of the third book in the series, so I'm not really sure if I'm ever going to get to it now. And I think I'm okay with that, because these books just aren't for me. And they didn't even get me an owl. Then I also read a couple of other audiobooks that were part of a duology. So the first one is Empress of 1,000 Skies, and the second one is Blood of 1,000 Stars, both by Rhoda Belleza. So this is a science fiction series. This follows the story of Rhiannon, a princess whose family has died, and she's now trying to take on the role of Empress. We've also got a bunch of conspiracies going on based around this technology where people have cubes embedded in them, and the cubes help them by storing their memories. I really liked that concept. The writing style was just not for me, so that's why it only got 2 stars. So I counted Empress of 1,000 Skies as a book set in the future, which was for divination, and then Blood of 1,000 Stars I read for a book with star in the title, which was for astronomy. Next, I read To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper. So this is a classic. It was the highest rated book on my TBR, so I was expecting it to be great, but it was not, or at least it was not for me. It claims to be a story about this white lawyer who is defending this black guy who's been accused of rape by a white woman. But mostly it is about this guy's children just mucking around and doing kids things. I think it's trying to give you the context of the town around the court case. I really loved the chapter about the court case, but the rest just dragged. So this one I read for History of Magic, as it is a book that is more than 10 years old. Then the last 2-star I read is a graphic novel, because right at the end I read a few graphic novels just to catch myself up. It wasn't the plan, but it helped me get my OWLS. And this one I read because it has multiple authors, which was the prompt for arithmancy. And this is basically just a murder mystery novel set in space, and things get rather crazy as we go on. I did think about giving it 3 stars, but in the end the conclusion was a little bit disappointing, so I bumped it down to a 2. Then for 3 stars, I guess the first one I would talk about would be Dates, Double Dates, and Big Big Trouble by Katherine McCombie. This is part of the Ali's World series, and I actually read this for potions because it is a sequel, even though I have not read any of the other books in the series. And it was just kind of a pretty simple middle grade / very young adult story about some girls who are being raised by their father after their mother has kind of gone off to travel the world, and they start thinking that he is dating someone in secret. Just a quick silly little read, but it did let me check off my potions. Then next I read Room, and I read this for Defense Against the Dark Arts. The prompt was to read a book that starts with the letter R, and this one does. This story is told from the perspective of a 5-year-old boy. This boy who lives inside this single room with his mother after she was abducted, so he has never been outside the room. It's a very strange story. There were definitely some bits that I really liked about it, but I did find it really difficult to get through at sometimes, so that's why I'd only go to 3. Then next for Transfiguration, I needed to read a book with a red cover, and I listened to the audiobook of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson. So this is a book on my physical TBR, so even though I listened to the audiobook, I can now tick this off that list, as well as completing one of my OWLS. I did really like this. This is a murder mystery story, and we follow the people who are investigating it, which is this one journalist who was defamed and is now kind of struggling with his career. And we also follow Elizabeth Salander, who is this girl who's an amazing computer hacker, but has also had a very difficult life and perhaps has some trauma to deal with. And they're both trying to solve the mystery of this girl's murder when everyone, including the girl who was murdered, was stuck on this island, but the murder was quite a long time ago. That was a very convoluted synopsis, I'm sorry. But I did really like this murder mystery, and I think I would have given it 4 stars if it hadn't been for that main guy just sleeping with frickin' everyone. And I have to add that I've just started reading the second book, and the one woman he didn't sleep with in this, he's frickin' sleeping with her. So I almost loved this. Not quite. Then I also read The Bear and the Nightingale by Katherine Arden. I said it right for once. I've already had to return it to the library, so I don't have it with me. But I did really like this. We follow this girl, Vasia, who's able to see these different Russian folklore creatures, and she's coming into conflict with the Christian church as it spreads across Russia and tries to gain some political power. I really love Vasia's part of the story, but unfortunately there was also a lot of political blah 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 that I didn't care about. I really just wanted the fantasy story. And I think if there'd been a bit more of that, I would have gone with a 4-star. So hopefully the rest of the series will be more fantasy and less political intrigue, but I doubt it. And I read The Bear and the Nightingale for Ancient Runes, where the prompt was to read a retelling. So this is a retelling of Russian folklore. Then it feels a little bit funny because I was just saying what I didn't like about The Bear and the Nightingale was all that political intrigue. But the next book I read I liked slightly better, and that is King's Dragon by Kate Elliott. This is the first book in the Crown of Stars series, which is going to be a 7-book series. It's already a 7-book series. I've just started reading it, and I did really enjoy it, but I think I still gave it 3 stars. Again, almost 4 stars, just because it took a while to get into it. This follows a couple of young people who are involved in this kingdom where everyone's fighting over the throne. In some ways it's a very Game of Thrones, and we've also got a bunch of dark magic and elves being hinted at. In the end, I became really attached to the characters, and I am excited to continue with this series, but as I said, it just took me a little bit to get into it. So this book I read for Charms, where the prompt was to read an adult book. The last 2 books I have here are the graphic novels that I read right at the end, just to finish off my OWLS. So I read Bee and Puppycat, which was created by Natasha Allegri, although this is basically a bind-up of a bunch of different Bee and Puppycat stories, all drawn and told by different people, so the art styles are quite different throughout the book. And we follow Bee and Puppycat, who are magical temps, so they get given these temporary magical jobs. It's really cute. I loved it. I think it is the best use of QR codes that I have ever seen in the history of the universe. So that was amazing. But I will say some of the stories were less good than others, and I was a little bit sad that there wasn't kind of more of a common thread throughout the whole story, which is why I couldn't give it 5 stars. So I read this from Care of Magical Creatures, where the prompt was to read a book with a land animal on the cover, and Papa Cat is a land animal, although somewhat magical. Then lastly, the 5-star graphic novel that saved my month of reading is I Hate Fairyland by Scotty Young. So this is volume 1 of I Hate Fairyland. I've heard people, especially hardback hoarder, talking about how great this was, and I never really thought it sounded like it would be something for me, but I was wrong. When I read this, I realized it was totally for me, because it's like cutesy stuff that's been subverted to be quite violent and dark, and that's my favorite. So I'm counting this one for herbology, which is to read a book with a plant on the cover, because we have these amazing little mushrooms and trees and stuff. But honestly, if you like vibrant colors and cute stuff that has a dark twist to it, you should read I Hate Fairyland, because it's really great, and I'm definitely going to get the rest of the books in the series. In fact, I probably need to buy my own copy of this series. So that was all the books I read this month. In total, I think it was 13, because there was that one that I didn't count for the owls. So I did succeed in getting my initial qualifications towards becoming an alchemist, although I didn't follow my initial TBR because I ran out of time, but I still did it. And I feel like an alchemist wouldn't be against cutting corners if it worked. If you have read any of the books that I talked about today, I would love to talk to you about them down in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.